back to the Black Table, the Black Star Network. I'm Greg Carr, honored to be your host every week. And this week we are back with our regular HBCU Master Teachers Roundtable. And we've got a topic to discuss today that's been in the news a lot, but we're going to have a different kind of perspective about it today. 105 HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities in the United States of America, part of a larger global network of historically Black universities in Africa, the Caribbean, and beyond. But in the United States, only about 3% of college students go to historically Black colleges and universities, but over a fifth of all the Black people who graduate from college come out of HBCUs. Nationally, at the historically white colleges and universities, somewhere around 5% of the faculties of those universities are Black. But at historically Black colleges and universities, over half, around 56%, are Black. And a quarter of the faculty at those HBCUs are white, with another almost 10% being Asian and somewhere around 2.5%, 3% Hispanic. In other words, the most diverse faculties in the United States of America are historically Black colleges and universities. So why are those colleges and universities being threatened? In the month of March, we saw 2 resolutions passed in the federal legislature. Concurrent resolution, House Resolution number 70, introduced by Dr. Alma Adams, Representative Adams, a 40-year member of an HBCU faculty, trained many Bennett Bells in North Carolina. Congresswoman Alma Adams, co-sponsoring with Congressman Bobby Scott out of Virginia, introduced H.R. 70, condemning the bomb threats which have been issued against HBCUs in January and February of 2022, and followed by Senate Resolution 534, introduced by the senator from South Carolina, Tim Scott, and Delaware's Chris Coons, condemning the violence and threats, honoring the legacy of HBCUs, and reaffirming the commitment to combat violence there. Well, in the midst of these bomb threats, we thought it'd be very important to bring in at our educator roundtable some more additions, some more permanent additions to our conversation. So in addition to Dr. Mario Beatty, associate professor in the Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University, who has joined us in the inaugural HBCU Master Teachers Roundtable, we are pleased and honored to welcome in 2 more of our comrades and family. Dr. Rich Benson. Richard Benson is a historian specializing in education and the Black Freedom Movement at Spelman College, where he is in the education department. You all pick up his book, Fighting for Our Place in the Sun, where he writes the history of Malcolm X Malcolm X Liberation University in North Carolina. Very important work, but he does a lot of work beyond that. And our dear sister, Kalita Nichols Fairfax, who is a professor at Norfolk State University in her native Virginia. She has written a number of books. If you pick her latest, in fact, is the African American Experience in Colonial Virginia. She was a member of the Hampton 400th Commemoration Commission. She was appointed by the governor there in 2010 and works as well with the Historical Marker Preservation Project in Virginia, among her many, many other services to our people. So without any further ado, let's invite in Drs. Beatty, Dr. Benson, Dr. Nichols Fairfax, and the HBCU Master Teacher Roundtable. How y'all doing, comrades?
All right, good.
Good to be here.
All right, good. Well, we can get right to work then. Each one of us is on a campus that has been threatened, and we know that the number is over 40 just between January and February. Anybody want to offer thoughts and experiences on what has happened? In fact, Dr. Benson, why don't you lead out for us? You're down there at the most unique configuration of HBCUs probably in the world. I know the students want to rename the whole complex the Martin Luther King University after Dr. King was assassinated. They couldn't quite get that together, but there's nothing like the AUC. What happened down there, brother?
Oh, man. You know, it's funny because so to the point of it being, so unique, with respect to the consortium or whatever, I don't think many people understand that the consortium exists. You have the ability to have, cross-registration amongst campuses, students from Morehouse coming to Spelman, maybe the Clark, et cetera, Clark over to Spelman, et cetera. But the thing is that, there's not much of there's not much involvement amongst campuses beyond cross-registration. So if something is heard about that may have taken place over at Clark, the alert may go out to students at Spelman, to the general campus at Spelman. This alert is taking place at Clark, maybe this street or maybe this portion of the AU or whatever you just want to stay away from. So if a threat or some type of announcement takes place, whatever that we get or whatever it'll be, for the most part, vice versa. So it's essentially kind of like this reciprocity of avoidance of particular campus or spaces, unless you have to go with it and take class. But in many cases, folks just won't go. So in our case, when students, faculty, and everybody else, received the first threats, obviously it was surreal. And given that most of our transitioning back to the physical campus didn't take place until the latter part of January, I don't think people really understood the gravity beyond, just a threat here and then you hearing about other threats nationally at other HBCUs. But it really hit home in one of the worst ways the first week coming into February, actually the first day, if I'm not mistaken. And in the way that it was responded to, many of the faculty, many of the student staff, everybody else, public safety or whatever, were not only, not prepared or ill-prepared for it, but most folks really couldn't believe the way that the response to the threat took place in terms of folks being on campus and having to get off of campus. So it was like, okay, well, you get information on one day, and then later on that day, it's like, oh, okay, well, the coast is clear. Y'all can come back tomorrow. And folks are like, wait a minute, hold on. What do you mean we can come back? Like, can we have a conversation? I mean, like,
can we talk for a minute?
What's that? Like, and then not only was that an insult, I think folks like not only are trying to sift through the shell shock, but looking at each other like, well, wait a minute. We know the folk who sent the message are crazy, but administration, are y'all where they at? Are you listening to what it is that you're telling us?
Yes.
So then it's like, okay, well, let's pause for a second. Some folks go back to campus because I get it. Academic sharecropping is real. In addition to other forms of dead peonage in which we experience right now, that is even more real. So they back. And I'm sitting up like, no, this is not going on. So then, colleagues, I think almost less than a week later. So this is a killer part. I've been talking with a sister who was writing an op-ed, and she had interviewed me on several occasions in order to construct the piece that she was going to write around HBCUs and bombings. And the day that she was going to release the piece, we got another threat. And I'm like, wow, this really real time right now. And still, our campus, just like Morehouse, just like ITC, Morris Brown, Clark, et cetera, still had no preparation in place. And the response was shelter in place. And the first thing I thought about, y'all, was, because, we are Cold War babies in this sense. I thought about when I was in school and we had to do, those drills in which you had to kneel up against the wall or whatever and tuck and duck and everything else. And I was like, are we here?
Right.
So to answer your question, Greg, none of the campuses, let alone the general consortium, really had a plan in place. Mm-hmm. And as the succeeding threats came, still really no plan. It was just bomb threat awareness. And then that kind of unfolded into, kind of like this piecemealing of a plan that began to, that was put together, whatever, but still not prepared for it.
That's very powerful, Rich. And when we come back in a few minutes after the break, we're going to talk about this rhetoric of fearlessness and we're standing strong, but that takes a very real sheen when we're literally the ones in the rooms. Khalida, you have a unique perspective, and one of the reasons we certainly wanted to hear from you today is not only you're at one of our largest historically Black public universities, but you got a child at another university in another HBCU has received bomb to talk to us. What's going through your mind there, Virginia?
Right. No, I share the brother's righteous discontent in that Hampton University received a bomb threat on February 24th. And then the following day, Elizabeth City State University and Norfolk State University received a bomb threat, and this was NSU's second bomb threat, very similar to what occurred with our Georgia brothers and sisters. The first bomb threat came during the break. It is a disheartening feeling when your child calls you and tells you, "Mama, we've been told to shelter in place because of a bomb threat." And my philosophy is these are not just bomb threats to HBCUs. These are bomb threats to the community.
That's right.
These are bomb threats to all of the networks that we have. If we consider what occurred during the 20th century civil rights struggle, the bomb threats to churches were bomb threats to the community. Bomb threats to schools were bomb threats to the community. These are bomb threats to our communities. More importantly, I think we need to consider that we have our Black intelligent or intelligentsia group at these storied institutions. And it's not lost on me that, we're in this cultural war right now, where folks are just having a hard time with other perspectives that vindicate Black bodies and Black movements and Black philosophies and traditions. It is very difficult to receive a call. The first thing you want to do is go and get your child. That is the first thing you wish to do. And Tony and I were ready to go on Hampton University's campus and get our child. We were ready. But then, of course, we received all kinds of messages. Do not come to campus. You will not be allowed on campus. We have the situation under control. The other piece to that, after, of course, the dust settles, if it ever settles, is that there is no discussion. There's no white paper. There's no coming to the table to discuss and elucidate for our community what these bomb threats mean. There is no full, wider engagement. And that is one of the really disheartening moments that I find ourselves in. The administrative statement was passive, we were recipients of a bomb threat. I'm thinking, what did we receive? We were recipients of a bomb threat. But then where do we go from here? And that is really a very disheartening piece for me, that we just are not in a space where we are elucidating for our people, which is what we should be doing, what these threats mean to the community, mean to us.
Yes.
That's just not happening.
Yes, you've given us a very, very important point of entry, Doc, by framing this as a community issue. That's exactly right. All of our schools, almost all of our schools are in Black communities and very much tied to them organically. We're going to pause for a moment and let this resonate. And when we come back from the break, Dr. Beatty, please help us by sharing not only what has been happening here in the nation's capital at Howard, but perhaps even from there, we will have a conversation about the history of these violent attacks and how this field of violence just kind of extends this perpetual assault on Black life. And as we just heard Dr. Nichols Fairfax say, on Black community. Back in a moment at the Black Table, Black Star Network. Welcome back to the Black Table. Greg Carr joined today by Rich Benson, Kalita Nichols Fairfax, and Mario Beatty at our HBCU Master Teacher Roundtable that we have regularly. When we left, we had heard from what's going on in Georgia, what's going on in Virginia. So let's talk about the nation's capital, where Black Star Network is headquartered. Dr. Beatty, it sounds like, just as we heard from Dr. Benson and Dr. Nichols Fairfax, we all got that same kind of duck and cover, shelter in place message. Share with us what went through your mind as we got those initial bomb threats.
Yeah, I think, at Howard University, we have been dealing with so much. Last semester, of course, we had the cyber attacks, which was the same, but a different type of attack to attack the infrastructure, the technological infrastructure of our university. And it was very serious. And I think that the thing that I think separates out perhaps what was going on at Howard from what was going on at the Atlanta University Center. I think that because we're in the nation's capital and we receive these types of threats, or institutions receive these types of threats somewhat regularly, I think that the response is different. And so Howard received its first bomb threat on January 4th over our break. And then it received 2 consecutive bomb threats on January 31st and February 1st. And absolutely for sure, that heightened the seriousness of this. And of course, like the other institutions, Howard instituted a shelter-in-place order. But I think that the difference is that Howard, being in the nation's capital, clearly has, or the Department of Public Safety on campus clearly has a very close relationship with the Metropolitan Police Department, with the FBI, with Homeland Security in terms of emergency preparedness. So they were clearly in instant communication with those entities, and they were in constant communication actually with the campus, from the president to with the video message to the written message, the provost, the board of trustees, town halls. There was a whole range of communications that were coming out through HU Communications, through Bison Safe, the kind of app. And a whole range of activities that I will just perhaps discuss in another segment. But I think that ultimately that led to the sweep of the campus, and then the message to say everything was clear. But still, despite this, that third, and of course Howard has had 4 bomb threats. The last one was on February 14th. And that third one, of course, was very serious on February 1st. That was on a Tuesday. I remember that well. And I just remember my students, like, just a sense of, like Howard started the semester late, 1 week late because of Omicron. Yeah. So we're dealing with that. And that's already a stressor. And then we come into basically the start of the semester, and then we have this. And so that is a tremendous amount of mental health stress on students. So actually Howard University, that Friday after that February 1st, the president said, okay, we're just going to cancel classes on Friday. But for me, I didn't cancel class for Thursday, but my response, I was supposed to be on campus on Thursday with my class, but I switched my class to virtual at that time. Like immediately, I switched my class to virtual. I'm like, I'm not playing. And I just said, look, the health and safety, regardless, and these are the things that professors do. Like what the university does is one thing.
That's right.
But also there's what professors do and can do vis-a-vis their classes, and taking their own health and safety and their own sense of the moment and their own sense of the circumstances into context as you attempt to protect yourself and your students. So I shifted my classes to virtual on Thursday, and I wanted some. Let's let this event breathe. And then of course, I did mention, I did watch the hearings on the Senate Judiciary on the rise of hate crimes on March 8th. It featured a number of individuals. It featured Kristen Clark, Walter Kimbrough, who I'll say more about, but really Kristen Clark talked about in her testimony that the rise in hate crimes in the United States is at its height in basically 2 decades. And of course, we all really kind of know why this is occurring, and for sure, Trump and the GOP have added more fuel to white nationalist hatred cells in this country. And that fuel, weaves into public policy. It has many manifestations, and it makes us all vulnerable, quite frankly. So, I mean, it's clear to me that why, HBCUs and churches, synagogues, et cetera, are receiving these types of threats on the regular because it's an environment of permissibility. So when someone like Tim Scott, sits up in a committee and says, "Oh, we condemn these, hate crimes," but you are contributing to the environment.
That's right.
Of these hate crimes with the public policies that you are supporting.
That's right.
As an entity. So it's duplicitous.
Well, actually, Marty, that's actually a perfect way for us to perhaps open this conversation. We can continue after the break. For anybody to jump in, Rich, I read something that one of your students, one of the students at Spelman, Marion Turner, I think is her name. She told The Guardian, my grandparents and our great grandparents faced this, but we weren't prepared. We were caught off guard. And on the other end of the spectrum, I saw a lady, Margaret Rinke, a columnist in the New York Times, February, said when she heard about the first threat of bombings, she felt a sense of inevitability. And I thought about that in the context, and I wondered 2 things. One, in terms of this infrastructure ability, because you're right, we went online. Like I say, faculty make different choices. We're in the classroom, obviously. I'm wondering from anyone, and Khalida, you work so much in public history and across diverse communities, trying to get this question of memory in front of people so that we can recognize the thing. This latest wave of violence, how do we think about even the rhetoric when we hear our presidents and administrators talking about we're unintimidated, we're undeterred, we're undaunted, but on the other end there's the messaging? Is it inevitable? Is this just another iteration of the consistent disrespect against Black life? And is there a normative function to this? In other words, they're attacking Black people again. I guess we'll just stone up and ball up our fists. I mean, anybody have any thoughts to do what Mario has just introduced, which is, yes, the bomb threats are specific, but there's this larger field of violence that we've been facing since we were brought here. I don't know if any of y'all want to jump in on that.
Yeah, please. Mario got me a little fired up.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
You lit the match, Rich. What you talking about, man?
So, I mean, but I guess the thing I'm never able to kind of like divorce many of these moments up from is the general mission and responsibility. What I've always felt that Spelman, Morehouse, Howard, Norfolk, Prairie View, Hampton, etc., like what it is that we actually mean with respect to being in existence, to actually being able to push back and really dismantle what it is that, folk in the Mohawk Conference tried to literally construct around this Negro question. It's like, well, we don't want y'all here. Right. Okay, so dig it. What does it look like with respect to within this particular generation, whether it's arson, this particular generation, whether we're talking about lynching, whether we're talking about bomb threats, bombing, et cetera. So what does it look like? Then I'm thinking about this moment in which, okay, well, most submitting to the responses that I can say that my particular campus has been able to literally, I would say, speak to, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in spaces around how the university is going to grow the particular brand. It's so much neoliberal rhetoric around excellence, but what undergirds or what literally should be able to support how it is that we identify our advancements. What in my aggressive opinion, I think has been removed from the general conversations because our students know nothing about these legacies. So when folks say it's inevitable, I would think that, okay, well, my interpretation of somebody saying that it's bound to happen again based on your ignorance of what took place not 100 years ago, not 200. We're talking in many cases, in this one, less than 25 years ago, because it just happened at Florida A&M.
That's right.
What was that, 99?
That's right.
2 months back to back. And then when I'm talking to my students about it, to Mario's point, to your point, when it's like, of course, we went on virtual because we understand the need for radical self-care better than anybody, is it being a part of our academic freedom in order to be able to do so. So I sat my students down, like I'm sure many of you did, and said, look, let's talk about how it is that we combat what it is that we've been faced with in this moment in which you are actually being expected to take on some form of PTSD because of it. And that's all of us. But the problem is that y'all folks don't know anything about the history of this type of violence, and you don't know anything about your enemy. So look, y'all, I sat my students down and we went through 5 or 6 instances of bombings and bomb threats. We did Montgomery, so Montgomery Improvement Association, Macomb, Mississippi, Charlotte, North Carolina, Florida A&M, and when King got threatened when he was going to Fisk.
Yes,
so
yes, which a lot of people don't know about.
Right. So we broke each and every last one of those down.
Was it new to them, Rich?
Was it new?
Then nobody knew, huh? And
no one knew. No one knew. And I started off by saying, look, we're talking about the general threat to Black life.
That's right.
And sister, to your point, talking about this isn't an isolation of the community. Like, we're literally in the community.
Yeah.
And I know we have to be reminded of that in times like this, especially when something happens and folks want to make the distinction between what took place off campus and on campus.
Yeah.
It's like, all y'all Black folks, if we could round you up and have that threat to the West End, to Westview, to all this, et cetera, like we would be able to do that. So we have this moment, and our students are ill prepared because they know nothing about it. And now we have to have a literal teach-in where I'm breaking course from the so-called syllabus in order to be like, this is a moment that you're in. This is the legacy. You know nothing about it. And I, as one, would do you a disservice to not even talk about it, let alone point you into this, this intergenerational threat of violence of which you actually are existing in. So those are the things that immediately came to mind. And I had one more thing. One of my students had to get on my case because I think that they were so accustomed to not having props and not having instructors literally pause and be empathetic. I wanted them to go online, and I didn't want to go online to teach y'all. I wanted to go online just to see their faces.
How about that?
And she was like, well, Dr. Benson, blah, 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 well, this is the 3rd bomb threat. And I was like, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I don't want to teach today. I just want to see your face. This is not a mandatory session. If you want to hop on, just say, hey, doc, I'm cool. I'm in my dorm. I'm in my apartment. That's all I want. But other than that, I do not want y'all to jump online to teach. And I thought about it. I said, well, I wonder is anyone else who may have wanted to go virtual, not even addressing it, but expected students just to jump on Zoom in order to keep things going. Yes. And that hit me as well. So,
yes. Well, let's, we're going to take a break in a moment. I thought about as our colleague Jelani Favors down at A&T, North Carolina A&T, and the title of his book, Shelter in a Time of Storm. That's the beautiful thing, brother. And for everyone watching the Black Table, we're going to take a break for now, and we're going to come back in a second and continue this round table. And you see why we're having this regular HBCU Educators Roundtable. You're getting an education in terms of what we do at HBCUs. It's a little bit different, as we've heard Brother Benson say. Back in a moment.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
We're back at the Black Table with our regular HBCU Educators Roundtable with Rich Benson, Nichols Fairfax, and Mario Beatty. Khalida, when we left, Rich had just led us through what he did in his classroom. I'm wondering, because you're on a big campus, you have some infrastructure, I'm sure you have all kind of options. But in addition to that, you've taken on a hell of a responsibility for the state of Virginia in terms of public education and public-facing education. Given the field of violence, and what I immediately, Rich, as you were talking, I was thinking, Khalida, about the response to integration in Virginia and all the threats and violence that came. Talk to us a little bit about how you're navigating this, because we've got a citizenry that doesn't know anything of what we're talking about right now.
I tell people Virginia is Alabama in a suit. because Virginia has such a polite way of maintaining the status quo. So they may not lynch you, but they will lynch you in policy and in resources. And, the violence comes to you in a very slick and sinister fashion. And it has disarmed our people in the Commonwealth. So I'm at a state school, different from Spelman and my alma mater, Howard. I'm at a state school. So the relationship that our state HBCUs have with state government is very much a caretaking relationship. There's a political alignment that, administrators feel very much having to maintain because a large chunk of our resources come from the state. And I do think that I understand that reality, but I also believe that it has muzzled real serious possibilities to continue our educational tradition, our socialization tradition, our public memory tradition. So when the threats occurred to NSU, I'm going to say to the community, Governor Youngkin provided immediate funding with regards to campus infrastructure and installation of certain security devices and so forth. And that has its place. The other piece, though, that did not happen after the one statement from the administration is the discussions that should have taken place to remind people of the violence of bomb threats to the community. Now, I did the same thing that my colleagues here did. All my classes are online this semester. I have 4 classes. Crazy. I have 4 online classes.
Hey, y'all, now y'all know what HBCU professors do. I don't know who y'all been talking to.
I don't know.
That's why we have this round.
I don't know. So they want you to do everything. So the academic sharecropping is real. Even when you're a tenured professor,
no question.
It is still real. So
a 10-year full professor and the first fellow in the new center they developed at Norfolk State and on the governor's commission. And you better be in all 4 of them classes that are full.
You better. And so I did the same thing. I had to issue, I felt, another email to the students framing bombings, assisting them to understand what bombings mean to Black people, what they have meant to us, what they mean, the messages that are sent, and then what our response should and could be. I made sure I issued those emails to all 4 of my classes. And yes, I absolutely made myself available to students who wished to have more dialogue, and some of them did. Some of them wanted more dialogue. They wanted more discussions about what it means to receive this kind of threat. And I do think that this was an absolute missed opportunity to bring in the elders from the community, to bring in those stakeholders, our asset builders, those old heads who've been in the community doing the righteous work of saving our folk from the fire. This was an opportunity for the community to come together. But Brother Benson said it best. HBCUs have ascended to what happens on campus versus what happens off campus. And it dilutes the meaning of HBCUs in connection with the organic community. And that is a problem. That is a problem that we have got to be honest about and we have got to address. So with regards to public memory, well, it's tough to talk about public memory with folks who are 19, 20 years old, because then they don't have the other organic activities that they can pull and connect to. They don't have access to the other memory keepers. They don't have access to the alum. They don't have access to the old heads with institutional memory. And so I think we need to be real honest that if we want to continue the righteous work of socializing our people within a context of who they are and who we are to one another, then we've got to really do better with public memory. So yes, we can discuss the erection of historical state markers, and I do think that we're doing that work really well here in the Commonwealth, but there's got to be other avenues to appropriately socialize all of our people in connection with who we are and what it means to move forward with all of the oppressive symptoms and situations and even statements that are violently laden, and how we then move forward with this work. And we're missing all of that. We're missing all of that.
Well, in addition, Cleta, and this is a public note, since you've joined Roland before to talk about other topics, but in terms of Black Star Network, I think you may have just given us a new assignment, because as you were talking, I'm sure we were all thinking the same thing. To get that community, to get those elders, to get that institutional memory together, that might be something Black Star Network maybe we need a day long or a couple of days or a weekend symposium to do exactly that. Mario, thinking about, and again, Khalidi, when you talk about this question of separation, and I'm sure, Richie, when you said neoliberal university, of course, all the gentrification, displacement. I mean, at Howard, like all of our institutions, but, the current president, Howard, I remember when he first got appointed, he once said, all the HBCUs are HBCUs, but they're all different from each other. And, I kind of thought, okay. So at Howard, where so many of the students are not from Washington, D.C., and there's often been a strange relationship between Howard and the district, something Khalida just said really just rings a bell. How important is it for us to reject this idea that our historically Black colleges and universities are something that should separate our young people, separate our faculties instead from the communities that we come from? I mean, we give the rhetoric of being connected, but this bomb threat is revealing the disconnect in so many ways. Could you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely, for sure. There's a great disconnect, but I also think that, Walter Kimbrough, in his testimony before the committee, on the rising of hate crimes.
And for people who don't know, who is Walter Kimbrough?
Walter Kimbrough is the president of Dillard University,
yes,
in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Yes.
He highlighted a number of things, but in his testimony, he highlighted something that's missing here, which is the absence of adequate resources at HBCUs to deal with these level of threats that are perpetual and continuous, and the need for federal state governments to pour more money into HBCUs in order to be able to deal with these threats. And he highlighted a metaphor of, basically crying wolf. And he says, look, we've had, all of these threats, all of these bomb threats for HBCUs. And in the end, none of them have quite materialized. None of them have materialized. And then the FBI said that, we have, maybe 6 juvenile persons of interest, but yet, there has been no arrest. We have not seen any of these quote unquote persons of interest. That's still outgoing. But, the point that, President Kimbrough was attempting to make is that when you have this intensity of bomb threats, is that when those threats go away, there is a tendency to be lax. In the moment, you want to try to marshal all of the energy that you can to muster, to try to do whatever you can to make your campus community, quote unquote, feel safe. But then a month or two goes by and then you're back to, basically zero, and you become lax. And then it's at that moment when something really happens, where you're completely caught off guard and you're vulnerable. And so the point about linking this to the broader community is that the assault on Black life is not HBCU specific.
That's right.
The assault on Black life is national, and this assault is taking shape on a number of fronts. You know, right. I mean, of course, you know, Kalita is in Virginia. I mean, the whole quote unquote anti-CRT stream. It's actually it's an assault. It's an intellectual violence.
That's right.
Against the idea of Black intelligence. You want to see you don't want to see anything about Black people in the curriculum. CRT is just a metaphor, a cover, a smoke screen for saying that we don't want you to count in the curriculum. And that's another type of violence. And of course, the violence that, you know, we're experiencing in HBCUs is the violence that has a potential prospective physical manifestation.
That's right. That's right.
The violence that deals with your body. So they are assaulting, the violence is assaulting our intelligence, and it's an attempt to assault our bodies. And they're simultaneous assaults, and they're all linked. The whole environment that is being created, that is making these hate crimes, that is making this violence more permissible, not just as an act, but as an idea. And when those ideas become this permissible,
that's right,
in the public domain, then of course we all are vulnerable. And it's not just about HBCUs; it's about our whole community, because all of these children are our children. That's not just HBCU children.
That's very powerful, brother. And we have one more segment to go. But as we pause here, as you were talking, of course, we think about our family in the Ukraine, those students from Nigeria and Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire who are coming across the border, and Nigerians have told them, don't go to Poland, try to go to Romania or something, because the Ukrainians are stopping them. And then some of the Polish, they say, well, the Polish told us not to let you in. They seem to have worked some of that out, but you're right. It's a global violence against Black life. And those students who are targets in the Ukraine are part of our family. And you just really laid that out, brother. So we're going to come back in a moment. We have one more segment at the Black Table today with our HBCU Educators Roundtable. And you see why we have our master teachers regularly here at the Black Table. This is not a perspective you're going to get anywhere else, unfortunately, but we're working on that. That's why we're here. Back in a moment with the Black Table.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A Black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on that.
Hey, Black, I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
You dig?
Welcome back to the Black Table. We are in our regular HBCU Master Teachers Roundtable. We're joined today by Kalita Nicholas Fairfax from Norfolk State University, Rich Benson from Spelman College, Mario Beatty from Howard University. And we had kind of sketched out the possibility of asking the question with our last few minutes of, why hasn't anyone been caught? But the conversation having now is so much more compelling and broader than that. So perhaps I can ask you all what you think in terms of where this priority is, where it isn't. Most of our HBCUs, as we know, certainly we're technically in the South in DC, but Virginia and Georgia, that's the South, and we know that those states we're trapped in. Yeah, resolution is one thing, as you say, Mario, but everybody agrees on the resolution, and then you starve the universities or attack them otherwise. So, talk to us about, the FBI has obviously made its thing. They say they got several dozen bureaus involved in this. The Department of Homeland Security has issued a directive and talking about, tightening up on security. But perhaps in this last segment, what would you like to see, not only at the institutions we're working at, but what would you like to see put in place at our Black colleges to kind of defend ourselves? I'm thinking about staff, campus police, the folks in the building who work in the building who can't just leave, can't duck and cover. What kind of things do we need to be focusing on to keep ourselves, keep our students, keep our communities and staff and administration safe in these moments as we try to work the rest out? Anybody, I'll jump on in.
Honestly, I am struggling with believing that there will be anyone who will really be seriously arrested and held accountable. They don't even want to send people to jail for breaching their sacred hall and carrying the Dixie flag, and they can't even do that. My gracious! So I just have zero belief that will happen.
Oh, by the way, I should note, Khalid, that for those of you who don't know, when you look her up, this is one of the sisters who had a very real hand in getting those monuments down in Virginia, and they screamed bloody murder when you went to touch Robert E. Lee.
Oh,
so I know
they still screaming. They're still screaming. But more importantly, again, what is our relationship to one another, right? What is our relationship to our people? Part of the challenge is our people right now, many are still really struggling with basic needs. They're struggling with family dynamics. They're struggling with being able to make ends meet. They're struggling with their situations in their work places. They're struggling with the treatment that they receive in city services and in other municipalities, right? They're struggling. And so it would be awesome. It would be instructional from the elders and the ancestors for our HBCUs. The reason why we have HBCUs is so that there could be a group of people trained to attend to the real issues of our community and to also socialize and educate our community about the threat and about what it means and about what we should now do. It would be great to see more of us in the community for our school to perhaps extend its borders, physical borders, into adjacent communities. We have these historic Black communities that NSU is next to. Extend the borders, extend the security there, not police, but extend the security there so there could be more of a connection and more serious discussions. There's not been one scheduled discussion, roundtable, let's just have a conversation as family since NSU received 2 threats. I think that's a mistake. And I think our lack of discussing and our lack of educating our people about threats and about the history of threats, particularly in this CRT moment, I think it's a mistake. And when you talk about school curriculums, I can tell you from the 2019 Commemorative Commission, the City of Hampton, that I co-chaired, the curriculums just don't go far enough. Black people are footnoted. The same historical figures are introduced to students, but what you don't find in public school curriculums, you don't find content and you don't find context. So students are not learning in public schools, right? The fullness of who we are, the fullness of who we are as a people, the fullness of our historical and cultural traditions, they're not learning that. So the curriculum doesn't go far enough. And we are not having these discussions so that people can understand what it really means to develop your sensibility as a person of African descent. And I think it's just a mistake. Yeah.
Anybody else? Rich, what do you think, brother? Thank you, Khalid. As we begin to wind to a conclusion.
I think the moment is Well, not pass, but I think there's a moment in this particular moment we need to do better at arresting the possibilities of what it actually could look like to develop a unified front amongst HBCUs. Whether they state or private, it's irrelevant because, as Mario put it, essentially like these are all our children, and essentially the general mission that we've all adopted, that we're invested in. Whether I'm at Spelman or Howard, et cetera, it doesn't matter. For the most part, like, we're invested in a particular aspect of adding to Black life. I think a unified front amongst HBCUs that would include a national conference in DC, to include a portion of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, in addition to talking about how it is that we could develop a general white paper to speak to the violence that we've all been affected by in the tiers of the physical, the psychological, the institutional, and then also the individual. So that's something I would like to see, in addition to talking about how it is that we stand as a unified bloc to be able to address what obviously is a terroristic threat in any other sense or case. If another community would have been faced with what it is that we've actually, been subject to over the past few months, not only would have been identified as a hate crime, but they would have received the full extent of punishment based on the, what obvious, is many of us dealing with some aspect of PTSD at this point. So I think a national conference, and then understanding that just because your benefactor might have given a bit more, looks a little bit different, or is only considering maybe 5 out of the 105 HBCUs, doesn't make us any better or you any less than. And a unified front would actually speak to this in terms of being able to support those at the top tier of the so-called HBCU IVs, all the way down to those who only have several hundred students, within their attendance. And in addition to no endowment, I think we need to think more as a collective front. In this moment, would be able to do such a thing if we actually, weren't so sectarian. So that's something I'd like to add.
Brother, I want you all to know, and Mario, we got about 60 seconds left, so we'll let you close it out. I just want to say that what you all just witnessed the birth to, everyone watching. Khalida gave us homework, and Rich, I think maybe this called the homework phase. We might have to put that think tank together. I hope you won't mind if we all come to Atlanta for that, brother. And maybe you can, so y'all saw the birth of it here. So Mario, take us home, man. Any thoughts in the last?
Absolutely. I would agree with all of the sentiments expressed, and I would just add that the most powerful community that we have is the community that we create.
Yes, sir.
With our own intentions, with our own values and our own purposes. And in light of that, it's up to the HBCU faculty, administrators to reach out to each other. Like, there are so many mental health issues that are going on all of these campuses with counselors, etc., is that we have to talk to each other. And we can't wait for anyone to make that decision for us. We, as faculty, as students, as staff, as administrators, we have to self-consciously create a virtual environment, which is easier now, create a HBCU Black table, to talk about these issues collectively and to hear each other and see each other. So at least, regardless of what happens and transpires, at least we have a sense that we're on the same team, in the same boat, moving in the same direction, and feeling each other's pain, but also informed by our struggle, the struggle of our ancestors, and our struggle to change this society, to make it better. So I think that if we can self-consciously create these platforms, that could go a long way to helping us to ease a lot of this pressure.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Beatty. And so you see we're expanding that HBCU Black table. We've gotten some homework today from master teachers, Mario Beatty, Khalida Nichols Fairfax, and Rich Benson. Thank you all for joining us today, and we will continue this conversation going on down the road, but sounds like we got some work to do. So appreciate you all, comrades. Thank you. More in a moment, we'll be back with a final thought as we clear the table and reset for the next session of the Black Table on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Welcome back to the Black Table. Greg Carr here on the Black Star Network. We have just experienced a powerful hour of lessons from 3 HBCU master teachers, and they remind us that these threats are just the latest iteration of violence against Black life, Black community, and that while they may appear inevitable, when we come together, and as we heard that debatee say, the only community we have is the community we create, we will be able not only to fend off these threats, but to build and transcend them. As we close, we think about one statement from a brother who was known at one time as Black America's schoolmaster, the great Benjamin Elijah Mays, out of 96 South Carolina, the one-time president of Morehouse College, interviewed in Ebony magazine in October 1972. Dr. Mays was asked a question for an article, a long article in that month's issue of Ebony, dealing with another form of violence against the Black colleges. At that time, the threat of mergers and the disappearance of the identities, the cultures, the traditions of historically Black colleges and universities, particularly public ones, like the one that Dr. Nicholas Fairfax teaches at, Norfolk State. And Benjamin Mays said that, among other things, these threats against Black colleges, which, as we've heard today, are extensions of threats against Black life, are persistent, and that we as Black people must always be vigilant. In fact, the quote that we'll end today's Black Table with is from Benjamin Elijah Mays, October 1972, Ebony magazine, when he said to us, faculty, staff, students, administrators, community, Black folk, you'll have to watch it all. Watch it like a hawk watches a chicken. With those words from Benjamin Elijah Mays, we'll close this session of the Black Table. Greg Carr here on the Black Star Network, and we will see you again next week. Everybody stay safe.